So we can officially start. Hello and welcome to our webinar, Improve Your Students' Experience with Business Process Management. My name is Vasilios and I will be your host for today. We are delighted to have with us today Matthew Fox from Microsoft, and Matthew leads the education team in the UK for Microsoft. We also have Paul Hedgeland, our senior consultant and PNMsoft, who will demonstrate how a student-centric business process management application can improve customer experience. So our agenda for today includes Matthew on Microsoft's mobile-first and cloud-first infrastructure approach for the UK education market, how business process management can improve the student experience via customer-centric technology, a brief demonstration of PNMsoft's intelligent BPM suite sequence in an education setting, and we will close with answering some of your questions. During the presentations and demonstration, you can submit your questions via the GoToWebinar widget. And speaking of questions, before we pass you to Matthew Fox of Microsoft, we would like you to answer our brief poll: what is the most important quality of a software solution? I am going to launch the poll now. So I'll give you a minute to submit your answers. In the meantime, I'll read out the suggested options. Number 1, is it the ability to create applications quickly, the ability to change applications easily, the ability to integrate with other systems, the end user experience, or other? So I see your votes coming in. I'll give you a few more seconds. It's very interesting results. So we're going to close the poll now and share the results with you. As you can see, 80% of you chose ability to integrate with other systems, and 20% the end user experience. So we're going back. I'm going to pass you now to Matt. So Matt, all yours.
Okay, good. Thanks, Vasilios. Can I just do an audio check to make sure I can be heard nice and clearly? You hear me okay, your end?
Yep, perfectly clear. Good
stuff, important to know, especially since you're going to be driving my slides. So thank you for the introduction and good morning to all of you who have joined the webinar. So let me add my thanks for you taking the time to do so. Hopefully this section will be useful for you. So as Vasilios said, I'm Matt Fox. I work in the UK education team in Microsoft, and I spend most of my time looking after partners, Microsoft business partners, who are doing interesting stuff on our core cloud platforms, which we'll come on to talk about shortly. But just in terms of background, I've been with Microsoft since around about 2001. I did have a short 2-year sojourn outside of the business before joining in my current role a little over a year ago. That time has been spent predominantly in education, and most recently I've been deeply involved in our cloud offerings, starting back in 2007 with a program that some of you on the line may recall called Live at Edu, and working now on what that has become, i.e. Office 365, plus doing quite a lot of work on our Azure platform for infrastructure and software. So if we move on to the next slide, really over the next 15 or 20 minutes, I want to focus on 2 main areas. Firstly, I want to just cover some trends in the market, what our customers in higher education are telling us and how that is affecting our business and of course theirs. And the second thing, and really I suppose the meat of the discussion, is to go through some key scenarios that not only align well to those trends but also to the concept of business process management, which is clearly what this webinar is about, and where PNMsoft as a Microsoft partner bring value into this discussion. But before I do that, if we can move on to the next slide. The first thing that I wanted to touch on are some data points, really. And these are through a very Microsoft-focused lens, but hopefully they'll give you some context in terms of understanding what we're doing and also why we're focused on the scenarios that I'm going to talk about. So I think the first thing to say is we have a really good commercial relationship with the higher education market. We've been in this business for many years now, and all of the universities who we work with have a volume licensing agreement with Microsoft. And you may kind of be sitting on the line going, wow, so what? But actually the reason that that's important is because it means that our customers, in most cases, have the rights to use lots of different Microsoft technologies. And that's important for you on this call today, because it'll be most likely that from a Microsoft technology point of view, you will already have many of the technology aspects that you would need to support the PNMsoft solution. And what we've seen over the most recent years is an obvious and very intentional move towards the cloud from many of our customers. And we have 120 higher education customers in the UK now who have adopted and rolled out our Office 365 service for collaboration. 18 of those universities are in the Russell Group, so fairly decent proportion. And then if we look at our Azure platform for infrastructure and software services, 52 of our customers, so again a good proportion of the higher education market in the UK are running production workloads in that cloud environment today. That could be storage, could be virtualization, and actually another scenario that I'll come on to talk about is 64, and again that's a pretty good percentage of the overall HE customer base from our perspective are looking at using Microsoft Dynamics for looking after their student relationships and so on. And I think that's really important for a couple of reasons. Firstly, Microsoft go to market through their partners, and solutions like the PNMsoft one relies on some of those technologies that I've just talked about and that many of our customers have already adopted. So we're not on this call asking you to invest a whole load of time and resource and potentially budget in new Microsoft technology. And there's a lot of opportunity for you to get real institutional value as an institution and compete more effectively in lots of different areas. So when we move on to the next slide and we think about the customers who have started to use these services, we kind of see nothing but opportunity for you as customers to compete more effectively in your markets and to provide very best services to students, staff and partners that you may work with. And we'll continue to develop these three platforms that you see on the slide here in three very focused ways. So first of all, we kind of use the term here global class, and we're absolutely committed to creating an enterprise class cloud platform that you can have confidence in from both a technical perspective, a compliance perspective, which we know is very important in the market, and also a commercial perspective. Second thing is the flexibility of the design of these services, and we'll continue to make these services as flexible as possible so that you and also Microsoft partners like PNMsoft can make sure they work well for your needs. And the last thing that we'll do, in terms of being people focused, is that we'll continue to be, I guess, very thoughtful about how we make these experiences relevant to end users and take into account this whole concept of a cloud first, mobile first approach. And I think that rhetoric from Microsoft anyway has been brought to life really significantly in the last 12 months or so, and hopefully you're seeing some of those things in the market now. For example, Office 365 applications now working across any device, any platform, with apps for iOS, for Android, and of course for Windows. Let's move on to the next slide, please, Vasilios. And if we look at a couple of the key trends that we see in the market today, and this is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, because there's only two things on the slide apart from anything, but really this kind of tries to focus the attention of the slides that I'm going to talk through, and they're categorized in two areas. First of all, student numbers are on the increase, but by fairly small growth amounts. 2014, according to UCAS, there was around a 2% growth, and forward-looking growth is low as we kind of look towards 2018. Even with the increase in international students. So from your perspective, I'm sure you would agree it's definitely a very competitive marketplace in terms of attracting those students into your institution. Student caps coming off heightens that competitive nature of the market, with obviously a lot of increased competition from established institutions and new competition also. And then look, you add to that some uncertainty around government ambition and change. Potentially that future uncertainty has been mitigated a little bit now that we know who's won the election, but you definitely have a need to start thinking about some key areas in some fairly different ways. Move on to the next slide, and just want to kind of start to cover off some of the scenarios that talked about that are very relevant to business process management. And the first of these scenarios is that we're seeing very strong interest for in this market is the concept of students becoming customers. And student fees inevitably means that they expect and often demand for more from their university of choice. So the ability to attract those students to your university, to recruit them as an applicant, and then have them accept an offer while making sure they stay at the institution, your university, once they've joined, becomes an incredibly important area where we're seeing lots of customers start to invest and start to explore how they can do that more effectively and start to compete for those students in different ways. Moving on to the next slide. So I think actually this isn't that new. Universities have always been carrying out these activities, but you throw into the mix the funding challenges, the low growth in student numbers, the fact that you're competing for a smaller student base, and the fact that, you know, if you look at the statistics, you know, feedback from customers, the students who are looking to join an institution for their further education or higher education needs are often 70% through their decision process before they even walk to the institution that they have an inclination to go and study at. And you have to really start asking then, how can you influence that audience earlier in that process? Let's move on to the next slide, please, Vasilios. What we're seeing is a desire and a need to be able to reach prospects through many different channels. These numbers are worldwide numbers from 2014, but they do give you an indication. I'm sure these numbers won't be a surprise to many people on the call. They do give you an indication of the sheer volume that universities are faced with when trying to connect with their prospective students. Next slide, please, Vasilios. We can see some of the tools here that customers are already using in Microsoft Dynamics CRM, Customer Relationship Management or Student Relationship Management, to allow institutions to use very simple graphical tools to design a marketing campaign, for example. We can visualize the student's experience using drag and drop scenarios that enable you to set up multi-stage and multi-channel campaign designs. 5 years ago, some institutions probably wouldn't have been able to tell you how many prospective students actually attended the open day that they were invited to. Making measurement of effectiveness, it made it really practically impossible. And a key part of the Dynamics tools is to provide insight into the effectiveness of those sorts of campaigns, with you know, with an open day just being an example of one of the activities that a university may take part in. And the tools here allow you know, to focus through the process. So you could, for example, provide a very differentiated experience to the applicant that checked out your website and registered for information and then opened an email and attended the open day, compared with another application where the applicant only carried out perhaps a few of those interactions and potentially you know, visited the website, registered for information, but then didn't actually open the email, perhaps didn't attend the open day. So you can start to provide a very differentiated experience. If we move on to the next slide, you can see that another key consideration is about really understanding what people are saying about you. And so one of the things that we're starting to recognize is that we know brand and how it is perceived is really important. And if a negative comment that could impact that brand is out in the marketplace, then marketeers potentially want to know about that, so somebody can react to that kind of sentiment. And Microsoft Social Listening can help with that in a very specific way. For example, campaign monitoring. If a marketeer is running a campaign for your institution, it's very easy to get feedback by listening to social posts. They can be evaluated. You can adjust the campaign in real time. And conversely, obviously, if you're looking at social channels and no one's talking about the campaign, that can also give you some very valuable feedback about what's important. Sentiment monitoring is another way of looking at this. So you know, words like bad or terrible, given a negative sentiment, obviously looking for good or great in positive terms, and also top influencer tracking as well, which is a third area here, which allows you to prioritize activities. So some examples there of how Dynamics is being used from a marketing perspective in the higher education market. And if we look at the next slide, we can see two international examples actually of customers who are successfully addressing these scenarios. You'll get these slides afterwards, so you'll get the web links for these two customers on here. And we've just covered the attraction and recruitment, the early stages of a student journey, but clearly there are many other scenarios where this is applicable, like pastoral care during the course of a student's lifetime at the university, case management whilst they're studying, help desk management, alumni management, of course, once the individuals have graduated and institutions are keen to remain in contact with those individuals. So let's just change tack now, and let's move to the next slide and talk about another scenario, the second of the three, which we describe as the business of schools. And this is a scenario that is very focused around the operational efficiency of university and how our customers are able to improve areas that are really not related to teaching and learning. So as the graphics imply, this can be anything from energy management to transport logistics to building management, to the heating and cooling systems within a building, for example. And today, there are massive gains to be made in many of those areas. And in fact, from an energy management perspective, there are initiatives in place from government to kind of make progress in these areas. So how can we facilitate that from a process point of view? If we look at the next slide, we can really kind of categorize this into three target areas. First is the ability to reduce our infrastructure costs by, for example, automating frequent tasks, building automatic backup systems as an example, even looking at off-site disaster recovery using technologies from Microsoft like the Azure platform. The second is around this whole concept of personalized data. And through the use of very effective data management, we can really drive massive gains in decision making and the way in which students particularly, and of course this is related to staff as well, can access new services. And the third is mobility. And this isn't just about delivering information or data to a mobile device. This is about self-service, so mobile self-service, the mobility of the individual as well as the device to provide, for example, students access to get automated notifications around fees, for example, help desk issues, which we're seeing have a real impact on the efficiency of phone-based inquiries, the number of times a student makes an office visit, for example. So there's three target areas there which we think are highly relevant to this scenario. And if we move to the next slide, you can see a really great example. I actually can't see the attendee list on the GoToWebinar, so it could be even that this customer on the call in one way, shape or form. But this is a great example of a UK customer, Royal Holloway, University of London, who's moved pretty aggressively actually to the cloud in the past years and driven real cost savings, especially in the delivery of certain areas which are now highly automated, which have dramatically improved the end user experience within the university in terms of being able to deliver services to students and really improving that user experience with some fairly chunky cost savings associated to that. And again, you'll get these slides, so the URL at the top of that slide will be accessible to you once you receive them. If we move to the next slide, the last scenario that I wanted to touch on is in the area of research, and of course this is still a really significant revenue opportunity for many of our customers. I'm sure that many of you are aware, and this is an example of the REF 2014 report. I'm sure that many of you are aware how the research submissions are changing in terms of how they're evaluated. Fairly significant number of submissions in 2014 from a lot of different universities, and again, it makes this market very competitive, and trying to understand how you can, as an institution, drive the best level of research and potentially funding as a result of that is pretty interesting from a scenario point of view. So if we move on to the next slide, I don't want to dive into too much of the technical detail here, but we're already seeing a lot of customers using, again, predominantly our cloud platforms to support research programs of the sort that you can see on the slide here. The ability to, for example, analyze massive amounts of data very quickly and effectively in medical research is an obvious use case for cloud computing, and the ability to model different scenarios. To share data within and across institutions is also something that we're seeing lots of interest for within our customer base in higher education. Why is that? Well, if we move to the next slide, you can see that from a cloud platform perspective that there is real value in being able to very quickly set up machines for research purposes and to take advantage of many of the points kind of made earlier around enterprise service, world class, and also scale. So the ability to really efficiently and effectively develop, test and research based on the provisioning of the machines, being able to support many different flavors of technology within our customers' infrastructure, and also being able to scale that infrastructure very easily, but also to an environment which kind of would be defined as high performance computing is becoming very important. And if we move on to the next slide, just want to touch briefly before I start to close out on this section on the Azure for Research grants. And you can take advantage of these grants. So the Microsoft Azure for Research program is really designed to try and accelerate some of the research that our customers are doing. It's been customized for academic, government, and industry researchers, and it's really about kind of these big data collaboration, data intensive processing programs. It allows you to take full advantage of the platform, the Microsoft Azure platform, which supports a number of different technologies, but more importantly, it gives you access to a variety of different tools and training and webinars, a bunch of different technical resources and support. And you can see a couple of ways there to reach out to the Microsoft Azure for Research group, either via LinkedIn or Twitter. And of course, I'm sure Vasilios will be sharing contact details after the webinar today. And if you have any interest wanting to look into this more in further detail and any difficulty getting in contact, then you can come directly to me in order to do that. So if we move on to the next slide, last reference to kind of support this scenario, I suppose, is another UK university. It's Coventry University, where you can see that on this slide they've made use of the cloud to significantly reduce the costs of their research, and you can see some interesting quote there from the head of Central Computing Services, and again some fairly significant cost savings that Coventry have realised as a result of implementing some of the technology that I've talked about fairly briefly. So I've covered quite a lot of ground here actually. In a fairly short space of time, and I hope that was useful. If we move on to the next slide, I just really want to summarise the three scenarios that I chose to walk through. And what I've done here is sort of tried to think about how they map potentially to the PNM solution, which we're going to come on to talk about in a few moments. And having worked with PNMsoft for some time now, I think there's a really clear correlation between, you think about how you're driving greater competitiveness in the marketplace with student relationships and the processes that go around that, from application tracking, case management, student loan applications and so forth. Operational efficiency, so the whole business of school scenarios. Again, lots of process-driven activities that sit behind that, for example, procurement, anything that you're doing with building management and estates, which is obviously a massive part of university processes and organisation these days, and then lastly the research scenario that I stepped through, and again processes associated with that would be things like grant applications, how you approve the sharing of research documentations, the governance that sits around that. So again, hopefully this was useful. You'll get the slides afterwards in terms of the section that I've just walked through, but I'm going to hand back to Vasilios now. And obviously we can take any questions related to this piece at the end of the webinar. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Matt. Let me take us back to the slides. These were some great insights on the UK education sector with some very useful stats there. Once again, thank you. So I'll take you through and talk to you a little bit about us. I'll keep it short, I promise. We are a BPM software vendor headquartered in the UK, but with offices in North America, Europe, Middle East, and a global partner network. Our product Sequence is the leading Microsoft-based intelligent BPM platform on Gartner's Magic Quadrant. We are customer-centric BPM experts experienced in delivering global process automation projects for our customers. In sequence, you can create process applications for your education institution on a visual canvas in a low-code environment. You just drag and drop objects to model your process. Once you create your process models, you can then automate them, integrate with your other mission-critical systems, and digitalize your processes to improve customer experience, reduce operational costs, and gain competitive advantage. Create responsive forms to address the high usage of mobiles and tablets by your students and staff. You can also personalize the look and feel to make this appear familiar to your users and reflect your brand colors, something we will see in the demo by Paul in a minute. You can finally optimize your processes with the use of analytics and collaboration between your team members. From our experience of working with customers, and specifically in the education sector, there are various time-consuming processes with a lot of manual tasks, frequent email exchanges, and paperwork. Take, for example, the enrollment process, clearing, or course of study. And when it comes to student loan management, where Paul will be using this process as an example for the demonstration, the complexity and bottlenecks can severely affect the student experience. By integrating your CRM and finance application with BPM, or in other words, orchestrate this with a BPM platform, you can allow students to apply and track the progress of their student loan via a simple, easy-to-use BPM application. So let's see this specific example by our product sequence.
Okay, thank you very much, Vasilios. Thank you very much, Matt. So we're going to look at sequence, and we're going to look at it from a number of different angles. We're really looking to provide you with an understanding of how to leverage the capabilities of the product in order for you to be able to create integrated workflows, integrated solutions in a, as Vasilios said, low-code environment. The main products that we're going to be looking at today are Active Directory, SharePoint, Dynamics CRM, and really the Office 365 suite of products. So looking at how we can send and make use of Outlook to have task management, make use of Outlook for moving workflows forward. The start of our process today is going to be via a student who is going to make an application for a research fund grant. I'm going to pull up the process itself. We're going to come back into the environment that I'm about to show you, so I'll explain more about the details of it then. But first of all, what I'd like to do is just give you an overview of the workflow itself and the touch points that it has. So here we have our environment to be able to let me access the various workflows. I've got two versions of this particular workflow. We're going to be accessing version 1. The previous version was simply the development environment. The environment that we're loading up now, we call our App Studio, and this allows you to create the workflow in a Visio style, as you can see on the screen here. Our process starts in a portal, so the student is effectively going to go to your website. From your website, they will navigate to the area that they're interested in. In our case, it's financial services. They will then click to access financial services. Again, in this example I'm going to show you, they're going to log in. You could have this seamless if you wish to by integrating the students with your Active Directory and hence giving them a one-click experience or a single sign-on experience. But we're going to show you the login just to give you an idea of security as well. The student's going to choose the financial service that they're interested in, and based on that selection, we could route them to different areas of the site, but we're going to take them through to choosing a loan or giving us a description of the type of loan. All of that happens in these first two boxes here. Because we're integrated with Active Directory, we know who the student is automatically And so we're able to now integrate with Dynamics CRM at this stage to go and correlate the two. So take our Active Directory information, correlate that to our Dynamics CRM environment. Once we've done that, we're going to do a check on the submitted data to see if there are any supporting documents that have been provided. If there are, we're going to create a folder and upload those documents to a SharePoint environment. We're then going to look at integrating with a finance system, whether this is Oracle, SAP, JD Edwards, it really doesn't matter. What we're using here is a web service integration to provide information that the student has given us, and in this case it's the fund name and also the amount that the student would like to borrow. Using that information, we're going to look up that fund in our finance system, see whether or not there's any money left. If there is, we're going to continue on. If there isn't, the application will be automatically rejected. Assuming we do have money, we're going to then create a case in Dynamics CRM. We're also going to add an item to a SharePoint list. So we're going to create a task in SharePoint, and we're going to see how that can be managed as well. And then we're going to assign a task to a user. This can be a member of the finance review team, who's going to review the requested details and make a decision about whether or not the loan should be provided or whether it should be rejected. And then we're going to finish off by letting the student know whether or not their application was accepted or rejected. So without further ado, let's go and run this. I'll close these two items down. So our student, I'm going to use Google Chrome, by the way, to reflect the student using their mobile device. But effectively, they've browsed through the website, the University of PNMsoft, and they're looking for financial support. As you can see here, there's login is going to be required. Our student Jane provides her login details and effectively arrives.
Just to double check with you, if you don't mind sending us a message, a text, can you see the screen, Paul's screen? I'm getting messages that you're seeing sequence live demo slide. However, yeah, okay, let's continue.
Okay, so we've entered now into the portal area that we saw on the workflow, and we've got the options that the student can now choose for their financial requirements. So in this case, it's going to be research funding. The form itself can be as responsive as you need it to be, and also within Sequence what you have is the capability of creating HTML5 apps, for want of a better word, as a way of kind of trying to define the difference between responsiveness and an app. If you think of, say, a facilities management type workflow, whereby you may need to go and do a series of checks for security or for fire or for access, and there may be a number of checks that you need to pull off on this checklist. An app versus responsive may well give you the checklist in an ordered but singular format, i.e. you may just have one question on your screen at a time and a button that just says next. So check that the fire escape is available and is not obstructed. Check, yes, that works. Is there any issues with the carpet? Yeah, no, that's fine. So again, giving you those single questions, one after the other is more like an app, and of course you can design the buttons to be easily accessed by those end users. On the other side, you may wish to say, well, actually, the end user's gone out and they've done this review on paper, or they're reviewing somebody else's work, and they're sat at their desktop. So rather than give them these questions one at a time, give them all the questions on the desktop in one here, because they've got a larger screen size. Versus responsiveness, which is simply going to collapse the views available to fit onto the screen size that the user is currently using. So PNMsoft, to just be clear, offers you both of those opportunities. So here we have the form. At the top, you can see that we've populated the first name already. Again, as I say, we've integrated with Active Directory. This student has logged in. They've qualified themselves, so we know who they are. Any information we hold in Active Directory now can be pulled through at this particular point, so such as the student number, if that was available. But I wanted to show you another feature in that the user has to fill out the required information in order for them to be able to move the process forward. So clicking submit, I get told that these two fields are required. So I will provide my student ID, and I will give the amount that I'm wishing to borrow and a short description let's see. Carbon solids in central London. There we go. So fairly topical. In this case, we've got a document that goes with our request, gives more details to help qualify the reason why we should get the funding, so we're able to upload that. If you have multiple documents, again, the system can be created so that you can have multiple uploads as well. So Jane's filled out the details that she needs, and she can now submit that through to the workflow. Of course, part of a sequence is to give the end user feedback. So what Jane needs to see is some correlation ID. So we give her a thank you screen, and we tell her that the ID number, should she need to contact us, is 12951, 12951. And this is a very important number. This is a unique number that we've generated for Jane. Nobody else will have this number. It's Jane's and Jane's alone. So if somebody else were to submit a request for a different type of funding, again, they wouldn't receive this number. This is specific to Jane. So if we go back and have a look at our workflow very quickly again, we will see that we have created or submitted the portal application, and we're now having run a number of different tests against our workflow. We've done a couple of integrations, not least of which is with Dynamics CRM at this point to get a student ID. Check to see if there are any documents. If there are documents, create folders in SharePoint environments. Check our finance system to see if there's budget available. If there is budget available, we're going to create a case in Dynamics CRM, and we're going to assign a task for an end user to review. And as I say, that end user, again, using Active Directory, can be group related. So this could be going to the finance team that deal with the research budgets. So we're going to start looking at those integrations now. If we go to our email inbox, we can see, and I've only got one email inbox here, so we're going to be using it to have both the notification out to the student and also the allocation of that task to the person that needs to do it. So first of all, dear Jane Rose, again, we've automatically generated her name. Thank you for the request for funding. Any questions, please let us know, and quote your reference number when discussing the matter with us. And again, in bold, we've given her that unique ID, 12951. For the reviewer, the person that needs to do the review, we have, again, sent them an email, but this time we've pulled off details of the request itself, the student ID, the student name, and again, that request number. We've also pulled the details or the description of the request. And what we're saying to this user here is that once you've updated the case in CRM, you can mark the task completed below. So that's using these buttons here. You can log into your Sequence Flowtime Portal, either on a mobile device or through your browser, and approve the process through there, or you can approve via a SharePoint list. So the option is yours. And the point I'm making here, again, it's about leveraging capabilities. I'm not saying that this is a singly perfect workflow, but what it is it's exposing all these different areas that I'm sure you have within your organization. So let's log in as this particular user and have a look at the experiences that they can see, both in CRM and in SharePoint as well. So first of all, we'll go to CRM. And if I just log into my CRM system here and go to my What's New, what we will be exposed to, is the case that we've created. So here we can see our request for research funding, item number 12951, against the contact Jane Rose. 12951, again, we've taken that from our workflow and we've used that to populate the CRM solution. So we can see we've got the details of Jane Rose, we've got her email address and the details about her name, etc. And over on the right-hand side here, you can see that she's already made a request for funding, which was resolved, and then we've got an active case as well. And if we click into that case, you can see that we've taken the details off of our workflow. So again, using that number 12951, created a title for it, and then put the description down, giving everybody access to what it is that Jane is doing. So Jane has requested a research fund to the value of, and we've pulled the value off of here. The details are as follows. She's looking at how electric cars can help reduce carbon solids in central London. So that's one area that we've got. Tom White, he's the person that's going to be dealing with signing this off, is now going to log into his Flowtime portal. Now, what is the Flowtime portal? Sequence is viewable through either SharePoint or through our own .NET portal. So you can either use SharePoint or you can use the .NET portal. Both give you exactly the same functionality. So essentially where we are now is either a .NET portal or a SharePoint. We're in SharePoint, so you can probably feel fairly comfortable and see the various bits and pieces that you would in SharePoint. And we're logged in as Tom, as you can see. So this environment is for heavy users. Don't forget, we could have proved this from within an email. We didn't need to come in here, but again, we're just showing you all the capabilities. So first of all, Tom has a message inbox here, and we can see that there's a traffic light system. You can see this red one is telling us that we've got an overdue item from Jane Rose, whereas the orange one down here, and we can sort these columns as well, is telling us that 12951 has come in for funding. So that's the first thing that we get access to in this portal. But when you're dealing with human-centric processes, it's important that you allow your users to be able to delegate their workload. Because if they're going to be out of the office or away from the office for a short while or a long while, they need to make sure that someone else can do their work. So again, that's a reason to have this more elaborate area. So I can now go into my delegation management, add a delegation. I can either choose all of the processes that I have access to, or I can choose individual processes and then delegate those to a team member that I have in my group, and I can then define the times that I'm going to be away from the office. And that will allow me to make sure that my work is done in my absence. And of course, an administrator could come in and do exactly the same thing should they need to. Other areas that we've got in here, of course, we talked about our process having the capability of uploading documents. So we have document libraries. Here's our university library area. And here is the folder that we created 7 minutes ago, item 12951, and we've uploaded that document here. So again, Tom has access to that document. We talked about lists and tasks. Well, here we have a task list. And again, item 12951, review CRM case. So we're able to tell Tom that he's got to do this work in a number of different ways. We've done it through CRM, we've done it through Outlook, we've done it through just giving him a message within this portal area here. The areas of this portal, if I come back to the main page, these are available as remote web parts. So you could take this message box here and you could place it in a portal of your own if you had one in SharePoint or just using our .NET portal. So lots of options with regard to how we keep people up to date with what's going on. But what I want to do now is just quickly go through the case itself, maybe go through the steps of resolving that case. You can be using your ribbon here to make sure that you've collected all of the right details. But I'm just going to go straight to approve the loan. Here we go. There we go. And just say here, approved. All right, lovely. And resolve that. So again, I stress that generally you would go through the ribbon to make sure that you've completed all of the tasks in order to make sure that you're able to close off the case successfully. So we've closed off the case. And we've looked at the idea that you've got different ways of being able to mark the different areas of the system as being completed, one of which was by just using these items here, funding approved and funding rejected. But of course, we've created a task list in SharePoint as well, so it will be good that when we finish our job, we're also able to update that task list automatically. Other areas that we have within the system is the ability to have escalations. So if a loan is not being reviewed in a timely manner, if you're not getting the job done, then you can escalate that loan. And here we have an example of an escalation, and we've marked that as important as well. So let's just click on funding approved from within our email. So there's easy access to get this process moved on. Request has been successfully submitted. And then if we were to go back and look at the task list in Tom, so we'll log in as Tom. I think it's 12951 was the task that we were looking at over here on the research funding list. You'll now see that we've actually completed that task as well. So we've managed to do those actions just by clicking on that one button from within the Outlook environment. So how do we build this stuff? I mean, this is all very well and good. We've seen an example of something in a mobile device. We've looked at it making integrations with various systems, but how does it all get put together? So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of our environment. We've got about 3 minutes here just to show you some of the basics that we've put together here. So we log again into our administration, open up this drag and drop environment and show you how we build these items. So first of all, we've got our workflow, but importantly, this is how we actually create the workflow itself as well. So not just a representation of the workflow, but how we create the workflow itself. So first of all, let's have a look at the first page of our portal, the financial services. If I double click on that, I'm now taken into an area where we call the App Studio that allows me to, the UX Studio, I beg your pardon, that allows me to build my form. So here we can see the bullet items that the student was selecting, as well as to select those bullet items, click on Edit Choices. You can see I can very easily add more options to that particular area, add choice 1 to that, call it number 5, click OK, and we've added a new choice to our list of items in our area here. We can define different views, so if I wanted to create a specific mobile view, the mobile app that we talked about at the beginning, I could do that using that system there. I can click Save on that, and that will now be available to us should we log in again. We were looking at creating folders in SharePoint. There's a couple of key items here, but if we go down to our SharePoint area, we look at the various ways that we click and configure that. What we're really looking for is we're looking for the SharePoint area where the list exists. That's already been pre-configured for us, and so we can make use of that list. Once we've got it, all we're really telling the system is that we want to put the folder in the folder called University, and we're going to create a new folder called Fund, and we're going to use this unique ID as its name. And that is all we need to do then. And the last thing we need to do is to upload the document. The document itself was actually stored on the finance details area of our form, down at this point here, and that area is called the asynchronous file upload. To then upload that document, all we would do is we just tell the system where we get the file from, and to do that, we're not having to write any code. What we're actually doing now is we select the first item that is required. It then refreshes this pane on the left-hand side. See, I'm looking for finance details. Scroll down to finance details, open it up, and in here we have our value and text for the file that we're uploading. So all I do is just double click on those, and then they get pre-written into there for me. So again, just pointing and clicking and configuring, not writing any code. We have a web service call. Part of the web service call is to send off the fund and to tell us what the value was. So again, using that same sort of environment, the required amount, select that, scroll down, find my finance details form. Again, just see it over on the left-hand side there. And in finance details, of course, we're capturing the amount that we want to send. So there's the amount, double click that, pre-fills that, and the fund as well. We want to send which fund it is so that we do the correct lookup to the correct system. We then check to see the value that's sent back to us. So check for fund availability, return value is greater than 0. So if there was no money available, then we would return 0. If there is money available, we're going to return a 1. And that means that we can continue on with our example as you see here. So all of these items go together in that similar manner. We're just opening them up, going into a wizard, and being able to review the steps and stages that are required in order to make those connections. The last thing I'd like to show you is just an example of a report. Of course, reporting can be done in Dynamics CRM itself, but there are people that wouldn't be using Dynamics CRM, and so therefore they need an area to come. And again, using our portal area, you can access reports. So here I'll click into my student loan dashboard, And as with everything in sequence, to build this report is a very easy experience. All you need to do is point and click to go and get the data and then decide what type of charts you want. And we've added filters in here, so maybe I'm only interested in research, so I'll just do type the first few letters of research, click filter, and now all of my charts will refresh to show me just the information relating to research funding. And you can see down here I've got the list of data available to me that actually makes up these. And last but not least, maybe I'm only interested in stuff that's active. I'm not interested in the old stuff. And again, I can filter down, drill down into that data to just give me the information that I need. So I can see that we have a value of between 1 and 10,000 here submitted at this date that's currently active for research funding. So that was a very quick overview of the solution and all of the various components that go together to making a nice student experience. Everything you saw here is available on Azure or as a hybrid model, so that would be both on-premise and in Azure. And of course, we're looking at talking to all the major components of Office 365, including SharePoint and Dynamics CRM. Thank you very much.
So if you'd like to make me the presenter again,
I will.
We can close with our slides and then go straight into your questions. Thank you very much. You can keep them coming in through the widget, the GoToWebinar widget. So you can see my screen, and let's go on to the next slide. So to recap, thanks for the demo, Paul. There are several processes within your education institution which are ripe for automation and can generate a quick return on investment. Your enrollment process, clearing, student loans management, and course of study are just a few examples. Matt shared a lot of others earlier, and Paul demonstrated one specific. You can even automate internal HR and finance processes that your other software applications cannot cater for, such as expenses management, holiday requests, and so on. BPM can help you get there faster, utilizing your existing Microsoft infrastructure and skills. But let's move on to our Q&A, as we see there are several questions from the audience. So I've got a question for Matt here, and it's about Azure. So how secure is the Microsoft cloud? We hold a lot of sensitive data, and we cannot risk jeopardizing our records having them on the cloud. Matt, would you like to answer this, please?
Yeah, I mean it's a good question, and obviously it's a question that we get many times. So let me just give you three points. So first point is that both Office 365 and Azure as public cloud services are regionally based in terms of local compliance. So if you're in Europe, your installations of those public cloud infrastructures are also in the EU. We host in Dublin, and we mirror for disaster recovery purposes to the Netherlands. The second is that we are accredited to official level through CESG, so that's the old IL3 level. So that approves our public cloud services for government use to official level. We're the only public cloud company who do that. And the third piece, although I don't want to give a short answer, but obviously we don't have a lot of time left on the call. I'm happy to take this offline. The other thing I would suggest you do is just type in Azure Trust Center into your favorite search engine, and you will find the Trust Center for Azure. You can also type in Office 365 Trust Center. It has all of the white papers, kind of the top 10 frequently asked questions, talks about all our accreditations and all of our principles around compliance and data, for which we have a very, very strong story. So I'll happily have a conversation with anyone on the call about how we address those sorts of things.
Thank you, Matt. I've got a question for Paul here. What skill set do I need to map and build workflows?
So there are two sides to it. There's the administration and the running of the workflows, and then there's the business users who also are quite happy, and we promote them to build workflows. For the business user, what we tend to say is somebody who uses Excel to the level where they're able to create functions I think most of us understand that, so if you can create functions and you can create graphs, then you're an ideal business user to be able to create workflows within Sequence Kinetics. Now, Sequence itself is very collaborative, so whilst we look at some percentage of ability for the business user, and really it's up to them as to how far they take it, whether it's 50%, 60% or 80%, you're going to find that there's 20% that you're going to look to have maybe IT help you out on those things, such as maybe creating the web service itself, creating that connection to the web service. But the actual configuration that you saw me doing there is aimed at every business user.
Thank you very much, Paul. We've got time for one final question, and that's regarding business intelligence. So with regards to the reporting, can I use BI tools such as Power BI to surface sequence process information?
Absolutely. Our environment is not only completely open, but is fully documented in a place we call our members site. As you gain access to Sequence Kinetics, you also have a member site access, and in there you will find a breakdown of the relationships of all of the data in our SQL Server database. And you can either suck all of that information out and have it reported externally yourselves, or you can just simply place a BI/MI system that just takes every single piece of data that we have. None of it is obfuscated, none of it is difficult to get to. It's just a case of knowing where it is, and we obviously give you that information.
Thank you very much, Paul. So thank you very much all for your time, especially the attendees from abroad, from Cyprus, Turkey, and here in the UK from Wales and Scotland. We will be sending you the recording and slides in the next few days. Even though many university and college processes share similarities, we understand the uniqueness of every one of you. So schedule today a BPM workshop with our expert consultants where they discuss your unique requirements, showing you how these work within your environment, and then making recommendations. Contact us at marketing@pnmsoft.com. Thank you very much once again, and have a nice day.